Hey everyone, Ben here. Welcome back to the Stellar Work podcast. Today I'm joined by Sander Hoogendoorn. Sander is the CTO of a company called iBood, and they are working in a very weird way. Sander recently made a post where they say they haven't got any Scrum, Kanban, sprints, retrospectives, and a bunch of things that they don't have. And in this episode, I want to figure out, how does iBood really work? And Sander helped me figuring this out, and it pulled me way beyond agility and way beyond organizational development as we've been talking about it. So if you're a CTO thinking about constantly improving your team, your organization, if you're into transformation, which you probably are by listening to this podcast, this episode is for you. So now, let's start. Hello, Sander. Welcome to the Stellar Work podcast.
Thank you.
I'm really glad for having you here because I found some really interesting things that I wanted to ask you. But first of all, could you give us a brief introduction to who you are?
Okay. So yes, my name is Sander Hoogendoorn in Dutch. Nobody else knows how to pronounce it outside of the Dutch people, but that's fine. I have been working in software development for about 38 years. I'm making money with it for 38 years, and I've been writing code since 1978, so that's even longer.
1978.
Yes.
How old were you back then?
Well, about 9, 10, 11, something like that.
You wrote software at 9, 10.
Well, yes, but not software as I do now. But yeah, I wrote code, basically, not specifically software, but
okay.
Yeah. And so I've been in this industry for a very long time, usually in a mix of roles that help define the strategy of a company and also to still write code with my team. So I still write code every day because I love to write code. And I wrote a bit about it, wrote some books, wrote tons of articles, and I do a lot of talks at international conferences. And I'm freelance, basically, so that also allows me to do a lot of stuff outside of my main role, which is being the CTO for this e-commerce company called iBood. And I love to travel. I have 3 grown-up kids. One of them is living next door, basically, to where I live. I live in Amsterdam, which is quite funny because I live in the Java Street. Well, it's a good place to live as a programmer.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. So yeah, that's sort of a short summary.
Perfect. Are you still writing code as the CTO?
Yep.
Doesn't that get in the way with all the management responsibilities that you have? Because I haven't seen many CTOs really writing code.
The management responsibilities get in the way of writing code. That's the way you should look at it.
Okay, yeah.
No, so it's very simple. I love writing code, and that means if I take on a role, I always tell the companies I work for, listen, I am going to write code, basically. So if you like it or not, I'm going to do that. And some companies are like, oh, but you're way too expensive to write code. And then I said, well, wait until you hire a cheap programmer. And that is more expensive. But no. I just love to write code. So I only do roles where I can do that, right? So I'm probably not going to get hired by. I used to work for very large consultancies, and I stopped doing that in 2015 to start working for smaller companies where I could literally do this. So I'm always on a mix of strategy. So also here at iBood, I'm part of the management team as well. Helping to define the strategy of the company and the direction and where we're going, and translate that into what we require from tech to do that. But I'm also always working with my team as well, which is really nice because you're part of the team, right? It's not like you are the manager or something. So yeah. I don't like all the management stuff. It's part of my role, but I prefer writing code with my team.
Before we get deeper into that, what does iBood really do? And did I pronounce it correctly? iBood?
Yeah, iBood. iBood's good. Okay. So iBood is it's an interesting platform. We're an e-commerce company, and we're active currently in 6 countries throughout Europe. So the Netherlands, Germany, Belgium, France, Poland, and Austria. And we have an interesting concept where we have different deals every day. So that's different from a regular e-commerce company that has like a full assortment of stuff, and we don't have that. So if you want to get the best deals, you sort of have to visit the site and or the app almost on a daily basis, right? That gives you the best benefit of the website. That also means that we have a very intense purchasing department, because they have to make the deals every day, and they have to make attractive deals with A brands, so that we can put it on the website in the app. So it's a daily changing offering of products, and that makes us sort of an outlier, right? So we're not a regular e-commerce company. That also means that all the software that we use cannot be standard software, because our business model is very different, and it's much more. It has much shorter iterations. So we have had to build our own platform, which is cool, because that's what we like to do. And that platform is basically a multi-tenant. We build it in a way that it is multi-tenant, so that we can eventually also host other companies onto the platform if we want to. But so far we use it ourselves, and we have a growth strategy of getting more from the current markets, but also probably entering more markets, and that keeps us on a continuous, a growth move, basically. So we are changing every day. So it's highly interactive.
But how is that even possible? Do you own warehouses where you purchase the goods and then send them out, or do you just buy it somewhere and have them shipped to the clients?
Could be both. It depends on the product, right? So some of the products that we buy from our suppliers, we put them in the warehouse. So we have warehouses around the country, and we work with a logistics partner, of course, to do that. But it could also be like, if you let's say if the products are very big, like mattresses, for instance, or beds or furniture or stuff like that, that is usually going directly from the supplier to the customer.
I saw an interesting post that I wanted to bring up, and that's also what brought me to the idea of interviewing you. And then we met, of course, in Edinburgh on the Lean Agile Scotland. And your post, let me pull it up real quick. It was a picture of an office. I don't know if that was your office.
Yes,
if that was the iBood office. Yeah.
No, it is our office, and it is my team.
Okay. And it says, no Scrum, no Kanban either, no sprints, no retrospectives, fewer stand-ups, no Scrum Masters, no product owners, no testers. Oh man, and it keeps going. No stories, ballpark estimations, everybody architects, lean architecture, no branching, no pull requests, no code reviews, no blame. And not only that, you did that by on a post where you said you were going to hire 1 to 2 junior developers for iBood.
Yes.
And I saw that and I was like, what a weird way to market those positions. What do those guys even do? Like, you don't do Scrum, you don't do Comma, you don't do sprints, you don't do retrospectives. So what do you do? Like, genuinely, what do you do, Sander?
Well, so you were at Lean Agile Scotland, where I did the opening keynote there, right? And that sort of explains what we do. So here's the thing. So I started rolling into Agile in the late 90s, right? So I think I wrote a first book about Agile in 2003, and another one in 2012, something like that. And
so that was like you got into Agile even before the Agile Manifesto?
Yeah. It wasn't called Agile, but
it was. Okay.
Well, so it's Agile is not an invention, right? Agile is basically, let's say, the common shared parts of a lot of people coming from the industry from different angles and looking at it in similar ways. So that's the thing, right? So in the mid 90s, I was working for this consultancy, and I came up with a way of working for the projects that they were doing that was highly iterative and had different ways of working than that there were before. Now those ways of working actually really matched well with the other approaches that later became Agile, right? So and I was already involved in doing stuff like that since like 1996 or something, 97 probably. I got into DSDM as well, and and the thing about Agile is, if you look at Agile really close, so it's been bashed and it's been promoted and it's been hyped and whatever, and I think the most important part about Agile is that it's not so much, it's not a process, it's the ability to create your own process, if I can quote my good friend Alan Holub on that. Um, and that means that you always should be looking for how to do it better.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's been an interesting journey for the past 25 years. How can I do it even better than I did before with the teams I'm working with? Right. So, and that means that like somewhere between 10 and 15 years ago, I started realizing that the majority of this agile community, whatever it is, basically the Scrum people, they were getting stuck in this stupid framework that they try to apply, which is not what agile is about, right? If you say no, you have to have sprints, and I've had that discussion with these Scrum people for years, that is not very agile, because if there's something in the way of working that you have, whatever that is, which doesn't make any sense anymore, you should drop it, right? So um, we stopped dropping the idea of having iterations or sprints. I think around 2010, with the teams I was working with, and then slowly you start realizing that there's a lot of stuff in what people call agile, or sort of like a concrete framework that they use, which has very specific techniques in there. And people say, no, you have to do this, you have to do that.
Mm.
And at some point, they just don't make any use of any sense anymore, because you're going way faster, right? It doesn't make sense. So my team and I, we push to production about 50 to 80 times per day,
And when
right?
you say your team, is that operations? Is that are you working on a certain project, or what? When you say team, what are you working at?
No, team is a group of people, right? It's not a thing. It's my people,
Mm-hmm.
And we push stuff through production 50 to 80 times per day,
Mm-hmm.
independent of what we're doing. And so it doesn't have to do with projects or things that we push, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
we do this all the time. So if you have to define stuff that fits a 2 week period, it doesn't make any sense, right? There's no point in it.
Mm-hmm.
So and then you can experiment. So that's basically the core of most of my talks is, to get better, you have to allow yourself to experiment. And experimentation means do something or leave something out and see what happens, right? So at some point in time, we were like, what if we don't have sprints? And if you don't have sprints, what's the point of having a Scrum Master? I never was a big fan of Scrum anyway, but so if you don't do Scrum, what's the point of a Scrum Master, right? And the things that these people do that we didn't do before Scrum came out, but you can still do that, but in different setups, right? And the same goes for having retrospectives, right? That's the stupidest invention that they ever did in Agile, I think. Yes, it works if you are used to having iterations of 4 months or 5 months or 6 months. Then it makes sense to talk to each other once every 2 weeks. But if you talk to each other the whole time, continuously, working together all the time, the cycles become much shorter. So a 2 week meeting for 2 hours
It's
is way
actually a
too
step back.
It's a step back, right? So if there's anything that we want to improve, we do that immediately, right? So I just got out of the stand-up meeting this morning, and what we did yesterday is, we broke up our libraries into 2 different parts, and we're now looking into how to get that working again. So that was part of the discussion this morning.
Mm-hmm.
Also, if something doesn't go right, we look at it immediately, right? And that also goes for how people collaborate, and the architecture we use and the tools we're using. And so everybody on my team can come up with an improvement, and we look at it and we see if it works. So it's a continuous, let's say it's continuous improvement. It's literally continuous improvement.
Mm-hmm.
Doing a meeting once every 2 weeks, that is always boring. So I've been in these projects, right? And we had sprint 78, and then we say, oh, okay, whoever really need to do this, and they say, yeah, we're going to do this, and 2 weeks later they still haven't done it, right? It's like it gets it becomes like a redundant ceremony, and that goes for a lot of the stuff that is in these agile frameworks. And the truth is, you have to drop it. You have to drop the stuff from these frameworks if it doesn't make any sense. And that is where most people fail, I think, is that yes, but you have to have sprints. No, why? Who says that? Well, it's in the Scrum guide. So that doesn't matter, right? It's not a holy book or whatever it is. It's just a 14-page leaflet that has a bunch of statements in it that we can throw out a long time ago. And we did.
Was iBood operating the way it is now, even before you came to the company?
No, probably not.
So how did you introduce that change? I mean, I assume before you, they had sprints and management knew. So by the end of sprint 54, we get user story XYZ, and you came along and you go, oh no, we scrapped that
yeah,
altogether.
Well, I knew that we were going to do that, but so you do that step by step, right? So you say, okay, and the thing is, it's changes are usually driven because you have problems, right? So if you don't have a problem, why would you change? I see that in government agencies, right? There's no sense of urgency just because there's no competition. So why would you hurry? But in an e-commerce company where we have daily changing deals, especially in an environment like this, it makes sense to have a way of working that is as shortly, iteratively as possible, right? So if somebody comes to my desk and says, oh, can we have, I had it on Friday. Somebody came to my desk and says, so we want to have another setting on this and this and this. I said, okay, so tell me what you want and I'll do it immediately. And I'm like, okay. So I changed the code. I looked at the test, it ran, and I pushed to production. And that was it, right? So if you're in a company that wants to change rapidly and wants to grow rapidly, it makes sense to have as short cycles as possible. And but we introduced it step by step, right? It's not something you can do. Also, the team I had the luck of that the team who were there were sort of already used to some agile way of working, and half of the team came in together with me because that was the team from the previous client I worked for. That was basically bought by a large energy company and then broken up and it disappeared. So I took my whole team and I brought it to this company. So we already were working in this way. That helped. And then because change was really necessary in the company because they got technically stuck basically, I was able, or we were able as a team to change step by step, right? And so we removed more and more from let's say the ceremonies that we have, and we also automated way more, right? So everything. I think if you want to have really short cycles, you should automate everything that you can automate, and there's a lot that you can automate, and that helps a lot in achieving these short cycles, right?
Did you automate writing down and prioritizing requirements? Because I see that you don't have product owners. Like,
no, we don't.
How do you know what to do?
Well, that's a pattern that I had been working on. I was actually trying to write a book about it, but I stopped because I got bored with it. And there's other people say, yeah, you should really finish the book. I'm like, no, I don't want to finish the book. I want to write code. Go away. So my ex-girlfriend, she used to say, there's still 3 books you need to write about 3 different subjects that would change this industry. And I'm like, yeah, probably. And I don't have the time to do that because I'm writing code. So, but anyway, so what we did is they had, so the company asked me to join them like 10 years ago for the first time. And then I had a talk with a couple of talks with the COO and a bunch of the people who work there. And I thought, well, the problems that were there at that point in time were not big enough to ignite the change that I think they need, right? So, and then they came back 5 years ago, because I'm actually working here in different roles in the company for that time, and um, the problems they had when I did join were actually big enough to be able to ignite the change. So we said, well, if you want to get out of where you're going, you need to start spending time on innovation and moving away from what you're doing now, instead of trying to keep everything alive and not being able to move away. So we distributed the time of my team into 70% to move away from where we're going. So heading towards the strategy of the company, 20% to add features to the current systems that were in production, and 10% of our time just to keep the lights on. Right, that's basically a Slack channel stuff coming in. Now, those 70% we spend on, we call it topics basically, and um, we have a group of people called the tech board, which sits together every Thursday, and we basically update on the topics that we are working on, where we are, and when we are done with one or some, what happens is there's a list of topics that they still want, and they can vote, and everybody can just come up with an idea and present that idea and pitch the idea, and then the board will say, okay, this is, well, if it's not going to help us reach our strategy, it's going to be thrown off. If it's too big, then we tell them to go back and come up with the first thing from whatever they want, right? And then the question is, can we actually do this? Because sometimes it's out of our reach, or sometimes it should belong on the marketing domain, or could be other reasons, right? And then the next thing is, okay, is this the thing that we should now spend our time on? I mean, and by now, meaning the next thing that we'll pick up, probably. And if not, we'll put it on what we call the someday maybe list, which is usually the topics that we're never going to work on anyway. So we don't have a list of prioritized stuff. We, whenever there's space or time on my team, but they can actually, or they, I'm also in that board, but we vote for the next thing that we'll pick up. And from there, what happens is, so there's the bigger items that come from what we call the tech board. Then there's the 20% that's on a thing called the general board. That was already named that way before we came in. And then there's the everyday running of stuff. So let me see what's in there now. We have a channel for that. And where is it? Oh, yeah. What's the latest question? The latest question is, there's a deal online that doesn't have any content. So probably something went wrong, right? That's
yeah, probably.
That was from this morning. So and then what happens is that so there's stuff coming from those three, or there's actually next items on those three lists, and anybody on my team can pick up anything from those lists, and they do.
Like they have a skill set that allows them to pick up anything.
No, nobody does. And that means that they tend to pick up things that they either like or want to go into. Well, to give you an idea, so I have people on my team who prefer backend over frontend, and they rarely do any frontend work. That means that if they have to build a feature that includes frontend, they'll probably look for somebody to help them out or to work with, or whatever they do with AI or whatever they do. And or stuff that they want to go and learn into. For instance, we were building an agent to generate content for products in our own tone of voice. So somebody was like, you know what, I'll build a vector search for it, and then I'll build an agent that figures out similar products and also takes them from the web, mixes it, and creates our own tone of voice, new product content.
Yeah.
Right. Somebody was like, oh yeah, that's a nice one, I'll pick that up.
But you have to acknowledge that this is not working for most managers out there, because in other organizations, what I see
wait. I don't care.
Okay.
I'm not in here to change the industry, right? It is just our way of working. So if it does, I always get people like, yeah, but it doesn't work for us. So what? It's not my problem, right? It's like, there's so many people coming up to me like, yeah, but that doesn't work for us. I'm like, so do I work for you? Like, it's always people. people always, I don't know why that is in this. I'm not sure if this is this industry or it's that people are not liking the fact that you can do experiments. I always get these remarks, yes, but that doesn't work in this situation or in that situation, or when we have 1,500 COBOL developers or whatever, right? There, it's always, there's always so much objections to it, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has objections to what we do, and I don't care. It doesn't matter. And I had this discussion with on the internet about a similar post that I did before, and I people, yeah, but this thing doesn't scale, and I'm so what? I don't have to. I don't want to scale actually.
Yeah.
And then luckily, one of the big banks in the Netherlands, the ING, said, "Oh, but we picked up your idea from your talks, and we're actually doing this at scale." I'm like, okay, cool. So it does work at scale. Not that I care, but it's. I stopped caring about changing the industry. Right? It says this industry is.
Too diverse.
Too diverse, but also people are very, very much objecting everything that changed. People are not so eager to change actually in this industry. There's a lot of people in this industry are like, no, I would just want to do the same thing as I did yesterday. And that goes from high-level management to individual developers who just want to work from 9 to 5. And that's fine, right? We need loads of those people. It just doesn't work for what we do. And that's all I care about. So, yeah.
Where I was going with my question was that you were asking for 1 to 2 junior developers in your post. And I assume that when you guys are hiring, maybe not a junior, but maybe if you want to hire a senior or anyone actually, right? Then you source from the same crowd, and the industry is breeding developers in a certain way. It seems that it must have been. I can imagine it's not that easy to hire someone and put it in an environment the way you run things at iBood. So I'm really curious about your on your experience and onboarding process, like when you actually hire new people on your team.
To be honest, it's really easy.
It is.
Yes.
Don't they expect something different? Don't they expect like, oh, I'm used to have Jira, I'm used to have my Scrum Master, I'm used to have retrospectives, I used to have everything of that.
Who would have those objections? Again, objections, right? So it's like,
yeah, sure.
Yeah, but people with those kind of expectations are the senior people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So correct. If you hire senior people, so we're on this fast rolling train, right? We have a very opinionated way of working, and it works really, really well for us. If I would hire senior people, and I've had that, right? So I've been on teams where the CIO, who happened to be my girlfriend at that point in time, hired people because they were the most senior Java developers she could find. But they totally didn't fit in with how we worked. So what happened is we got into huge discussions with these people, and they were very experienced people, very good people. They just didn't fit our way of working at that point in time. And I'm talking like a decade ago, right? So, and what I learned from that is that if you hire senior people that are used to a different way of working, like you mentioned, like, oh, they're used to having Jira or whatever they have, right? Is that it's very hard to onboard people like that. So as a result, we stopped hiring senior people.
Entirely. Wow. That is so weird because the whole industry now says, well, junior developers can be replaced by AI. We're only going to hire the super high level senior architect, full stack, whatever, right?
You know what's going to happen?
Go the other way around.
We go the. You know what's going to happen to the industry if everybody's going to go that direction? It's going to age. It's like my good friend Jules May says, the whole industry is going to be like COBOL, right? It's going to be the very senior old-aged people that still know how to do the work, and nobody else knows how to do this stuff. Because if you don't educate and you don't hire junior people, you just hire the senior people, the whole industry will age really quickly, actually. So there's a lot of people that are now in their 40s or in their early 50s or whatever, right? If you hire those people and we don't hire juniors anymore, where are the new seniors going to come from? Who's going to create the new seniors? So within 10 years, we will have hollowed out ourselves
A
completely
junior
as an industry.
developer, maybe with 20 years of experience of being unemployed, that could be the new senior. I don't know.
But there's not going to be, if we only hire senior people
Yeah.
and nobody hires junior people anymore, we're not going to have new seniors because the current seniors they're going to retire, right, in like 10 years time. So where do the new seniors come from? They're not going to come from nowhere, right? And then people are like, yeah, it's all going to be AI. Well, I'm not sure about that, but it's if we hollow out this industry if we go this direction.
Yeah. And it's interesting that
And also,
yeah.
sorry, yeah, no, go ahead.
Okay. I find it super interesting because talking to you is my introduction to the second company that does this very contrarian approach. The first was another podcast that I always mention in the episode because it really touched me. Was an interview by Gergely Orzos, the pragmatic engineer, who interviewed some leader from Shopify. And they had the opportunity to beta test the GitHub Copilot even before it was called GitHub Copilot, right?
Yeah.
So they have the longest experience ever as an organization. And they went with more focus on hiring junior people. Because what they found is that if you hire seniors, they are less adaptive to new technology.
Yes, exactly.
And you lose your edge on the tech end, right?
Yeah,
and it's easier to have young people on board on new technology, on really being at the edge of things, especially when things are moving that fast as it is right now. So it's really interesting to hear you and have you as a second example on an organization that takes that path.
And I totally agree with that. So junior people, and whether they are young or not, that doesn't really matter because you also have people coming in from other industries still to our industry. And they're also juniors, right? So the thing with junior people is that they are usually very eager to learn, right? And they learn really rapidly usually as well. It's not everybody at the same speed, but they are very eager to contribute as well, right? So they pick up much faster than a senior person who's very rusted into a Jira approach, whatever, blah blah blah, Scrum, but do whatever they do, right? So people with less experience in industry are much more enthusiastic and are much more. They can adapt much faster to how we roll, and so when I hire people, I look for people who are very eager to learn, right? And who are very determined to make it in my team, in our team, I should say. So that's the kind of people that I look for. And it's not very hard to find these people, actually, to be honest.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's pretty easy, actually.
Isn't it like, when I think of onboarding, I always think of introducing processes and roles and meetings, and this is how we do that, and this is how we do that.
No.
But what I hear from you is that you don't have that structure to cling on, or not that much of a structure to cling on. So how does onboarding look like on your team?
Well, I have a new developer coming in January. And I spoke to her last week, and so we had our huge Christmas party last Friday, and we already invited her to come in, and she was very enthusiastic and very eager to start. And so what's going to happen is she's going to come in. I'm going to spend a day with her, introducing to our architectural principles, the way we work, where everything is. Meaning where the code sits, how the repos are built up. So we have a lot of, let's say, guardrails about how our architecture is set up, why we do the things we do, and it's probably going to take a day or so, and then I'm going to explain to her how the processes we have. We don't have a lot of process. We actually don't. Probably in the way that most people see processes, we don't have that, and then she gets a body assigned, and somebody from the team, and I haven't asked, but I know a lot of people who like doing this stuff, and they'll pick her up, and then we'll probably put her working on a smaller item first, and then as people grow and working together, right? So we have a lot of ways of collaborating on the team. We do a lot of pair programming. We do a lot of mob programming. We have knowledge sharing sessions. We have one this afternoon. Actually, we do that every week. And we work together a lot. Also, we work in a hybrid mode, meaning people can come to the office, and there's always people from my team in the office. I'm usually there. I'm usually there 4 days a week, except for Tuesdays because I work from home on Tuesdays. So to be able to vacuum right my home and stuff like that, and so that's also why I put in the post that I put out. I said I want people who live in the region because they need to be able to come to the office. So it doesn't help if people live in India or Brazil or wherever, right? That doesn't work for us. And that's basically it for onboarding. We'll introduce her to what we do, who we are, and then figure out a way for her how to get help. So get a buddy, get a good MacBook M3 or M4, depending on what's current, and then we'll just get her started. And I'm pretty confident that she will actually check in code. She'll probably check in her code for the first time within days, and that's it. Because it's not a very complicated situation. Yeah. What is complicated is the domain, right? So an e-commerce domain, it doesn't seem very complicated, but it actually is quite more complicated than a lot of people think. I gave a lot of training courses over the years, and e-commerce is always an easy example to use because it's easy to understand for people.
Yeah,
but
it's relatable.
Yeah, it's relatable, right? But when you build an e-commerce platform, it actually gets quite complicated because there's a lot of complicated stuff that you don't take into account when you just model it out. And so the difficulty is in the domain, but we have a microservices architecture, and the whole platform is broken down into currently, I would say about 160 small parts that all have a small part of the responsibilities of the whole platform, basically. And so once you get an idea about what is where, and that is very clear. So we use domain-driven design everywhere, and that means it's actually quite clear where stuff is. And then, of course, the devil is in the details, but those she can get from talking to the other people on the team. And we talk to each other the whole day through, right? It's like I sat next to one of my team members yesterday, and he spent about half the day working with one of our juniors on a minor feature that she was building. And so we help each other out all the time. And everybody has their preferences, right? Everybody has people that they love to work with and people that they feel less comfortable with. And but it's a constant changing mode of operandi depending on what the topics are that we work on. Yeah. For instance, I'm currently working on a typical, well, let's call it UI framework topic, which is one of the bigger topics that we do now, and marketing and purchasing are actually very eager to get this thing out there. So I'm working on it, but I worked on it yesterday. I was in the office, so I was sort of rubber ducking with one of our more junior people on the team, and so it's not that I, as a senior, I'm afraid to ask things to our juniors or the other way around, right? It's a very open culture. So there has to be, you can only do that when there's a lot of trust. And from there, it's also, we have each other's back as well. And that's also nice. And it also comes from the cultural fit that this way of working has, right? It's a culture where we don't blame people, but if, for instance, if I check in my code, which I'm going to do right after this call, and then the pipeline might break, and then somebody might see it and I'm like, hey, you forgot a test here. You know what? I'll write it for you. And that kind of stuff happens all the time. And everybody does that for everybody. So we have each other's back all the time. And that is
when you entered that job, have you had that structure, that way of running an organization? Have you had that in mind as an organizational architect? You go like, I'm aiming for this. Our team has to work in this specific way. Or did it emerge somehow? And how long did it take to really become
materialize?
Materialize. Like, performant. I was about to say performant, then I was a bit hesitant.
So the bigger picture I've had in mind of this way of working, it's not a way. So the problem with this is there is no fixed way of working. We don't have a way of working that we stick to. It changes all the time. And that is what I had in mind, a way of working that changes all the time and where we improve all the time. And that it was going in the direction that we're going. Yeah, I knew that already because that's pretty similar as I've done for the last, let's say, 15 years. So it's always been going this direction into building smaller components, smaller features, in shorter cycles with smaller teams. And that is sort of the story of the past 25 years in teams I work with. And the team I now work with is, in that sense, the furthest ahead of the curve, I would say. It's sort of like in between bleeding edge and leading edge, right? We do stuff, and if I talk about this stuff at conferences, which I do a lot, is that always people are like, "Oh, we want to do that too, and can I come and work for you?" And so it is a way of working that inspires people. But for a lot of companies, so I did a half day talk at a bank last week, and it was very interesting because people were very interested and very inspired by the way we work. And the funny thing is, because we actually do this, it's not a theoretical exercise, right? It's like we actually do this, and that makes it very very approachable.
Yeah.
And of course they come with the objections. Yeah, but this will never work for us because we do this and we do that. And usually my presentations end with, well, if you want to change something, change it. And don't wait for somebody else to go out and do this. Don't wait for a manager to say, oh, you're now allowed to do this. If my team wants to improve something, they don't need my permission, right? Even better, they have my permission by default, because everything that can improve what we do is good. And that can be technical, it can be architectural, it can be infrastructural, it can be in our way of working, in the tools we use. People on my team experiment all the time, right? One of the guys on my team, he is way ahead of the curve when it comes to using AI in his own way of working. He's currently building a new email template editor using an open source product, and he hasn't written a single line of code yet. So his AI wrote all the code. And he is experimenting with doing that from specifications and using it in Cursor, and then having all sorts of markdown files with all sorts of guidelines on how to do it. And he picked our architecture guide and he put it in a file. So the AI knows a lot about how we write code. And so he let the AI write the code. And so he's experimenting with it, and that's cool. And we have a knowledge sharing session. We call that Lean Coffee this afternoon. And he'll probably show us what he's now up to. And other people are showing what they are doing.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. It is.
You said there is no fixed framework that you've written down or anything, right?
No.
But I think the main takeaway here is that there is a path where you have to create your own framework. And maybe this is a good ending note. If you could share some tips and tricks how other companies came up, that tips and tricks that other companies could apply to really find their own style of doing things, their own way of working. Because I assume just copy pasting something between iBood and Spotify will not result in what people hope for.
No, it's so the thing is, right, so what I see a lot of I'm thinking about the big banks in the Netherlands. They change their way of working all the time. They actually don't change their way of working. They just rephrase it, right? They so some years ago, a number of the big banks in the Netherlands, they copied the Spotify model. The thing about the Spotify model is that it actually doesn't really exist. So it was a model that Hendrik Knieberg wrote down at some point in time to display how they were working at that point in time. They changed it the week after, right? It doesn't exist. And that's the same with us, right? We don't have a fixed way of working because it changes all the time. And that is the big thing, right? If you want to get better, you should be able and you should be allowed to question everything, right? And that is the problem with most companies and organizations. They don't allow themselves to challenge themselves, um, and that is because they're afraid of change. And that's okay, but you're never going to get anywhere, right? So I usually use this example, and that's probably the best example. I was having dinner with my mother a long time ago, probably around no, probably 5, 6 years ago, and we had just come back from a vacation in, I think it was Italy, not 100% sure. So I showed her the pictures, and she said, "Oh, that's really cool." And then she was like, "So why didn't we?" And she meant my father and me never do that, never go there to the south of Italy. And I'm like, "Well, you guys went to the same campsite in the south of France for 25 years. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? They enjoyed that tremendously, right? And if they would be able to go back now, they would. Well, they both passed away, but that's okay to do that, right? However, if you want to change what you do, if you want to see something new, or if you want to experience something new and get a richer life, basically, then go out and do that, right? And that's the problem. A lot of companies, a lot of people in companies, a lot of developers are reluctant to change because they are okay with what they're doing. But but that's not going to improve your overall experience in your way of working. And if you want to improve, and for us, we do that constantly, right? We'll, somebody, I'm not sure whose quote it is, but said change is the only constant, and that's literally true. Now, the direction I think you should go towards experimentation is this. There's a guy called D Hock. He used to be the CEO of Visa, the credit card company. And he says, very simple rules and regulations will create intelligent behavior. Very strict and abundant rules and regulations will create stupid behavior, right? So if you want to get better, you need to allow yourself to experiment. In order to experiment, the trick is to take away the rules, right? The less rules there are, the easier it is to experiment. And the more trust you can give the people to experiment. So in my team, most of the people, well, everybody actually, is doing some sort of experiment with what they are doing in order to get better as a whole, as a company. And well, and the end quote from D. Hock, he says, you need to simplify to amplify. And that's the core of it, right? So you go, you remove stuff, see if that still works. What if you don't do retrospectives? What happens, right? And the example I always use is there's a crossroads near where I live called Alexanderplein in Amsterdam, and it used to have a lot of traffic lights. And at some point in time, the city council decided to take away the traffic lights. So they removed rules from the crossroads. And it's a big crossroad. The tram is going across, there's cars coming from 5 directions, bicycles, pedestrians, tourists, whatever you have, right? Scooters, and they all come onto that crossroad. If you don't have traffic lights, what happens? What do you think happens?
People would drive slower. People would watch more because they have to figure out what's going on, right?
Yes, exactly that. So what happens is, instead of just blindly following the rules, like we have this retrospective every 2 weeks, that's the rule. We have a sprint, so we need to start planning what's in the sprint, and it has to fit that sprint completely, which it never does. Instead of that, you have people communicating with each other. So if I cross that crossroads, and I do that every day on my way to work, I look at the other people that are coming in or going out and try to figure out what their intention is just by looking at these people, right? And I need a little communication with these people to see what their intentions are and to see whether I can go first or that I let them go first. If there's an old lady on the sidewalk and that wants to cross or whatever, right? Or if there's a BMW coming from the other side of the road, you let them go first, right? Or the tram, right? They don't stop actually, even if they are mandatory to stop. So you get into a much more communicative state of
Yeah.
working together. And that's exactly what we do on our team. So we took away a lot of these concepts that come from aging agile frameworks, because they're all also 30 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
And take it away, see what happens. And so like stand-ups is a good example, right? We started experimenting with having less stand-ups. And then we realized at some point in time that, so we stopped doing it on Thursday, because on Thursday my whole team is in the office, except for one or two people who can't make it because of whatever reasons, right? So we stopped doing them on Thursdays because we're like, everybody's here anyway, so why would we do it? We talk to each other the whole day. And then we realized we were leaving out the people who couldn't make it. So one of the people on my team, he actually lives on the other side of the country, which is like 200 kilometers. So he can't always make it to the office. And then he was left out on Thursdays. And so we realized, okay, this was not a good experiment, or the experiment was good, but the outcome was that we should do it again on Thursdays. So we're now doing it again. So experiments, they can succeed, but they can also fail. And you have to allow yourself to fail. If you're not allowed to fail, and that's the thing with a lot of big companies, people are not allowed to fail. As a result, they don't experiment. As a result, they don't change. As a result, they don't get better at what they do.
But they think, as a result, they don't fail.
They don't fail, but they are also...
at least not in the short run. Or at least they pretend so.
It could be that they don't fail. It could also be that they're 10 times slower than they need to be, right?
Yeah.
If you look at IT projects in government, they are horrible. It's like, it's unimaginable how much time and money and effort and just doing stuff goes into those projects, often with very little result. And it's a shame, actually, because also, and the reason for that is that people in those projects are often very reluctant to change, because it's not a culture that cultivates change. Yeah. It's a culture that cultivates stability and doing the same thing as yesterday. Doesn't always work that well. I've been in these projects; they're horrible. It's just terrible. Sander, so it's not, and it's just not for me, right? It's like I do things differently.
Yeah, not for me neither. Sander, we have to wrap it up. We're slowly but surely running out of time. Thank you so much for doing this. And I feel that we have to do a second episode because you have just so much to tell. So thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for coming on to the show, and hope to talk to you really soon. And thanks for watching, everyone, and see you soon. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to the very end of today's episode. I hope you enjoyed the talk with Sander as much as I did. I learned a bunch from him and his experience at iBood and his other companies that he's worked at. If you want to learn more, you can open up the show notes and gather more information about Sander's work, about how iBood operates. I promoted all the links below. And if you like this episode, why not forward it to someone who might like it as well? It really helps the podcast grow. And if you got feedback for us, just write us a short message on LinkedIn or write us an email at info@stellarwork.com. That is info@stellarwork.com. See you next week on the latest episode. Have a good one. Bye.